several of you that a few weeks ago, when I came to help collect supplies for Vacation Bible School, I could not, for the life of me, figure out why we needed so many people. As most of you know, this is my first Vacation Bible School experience with you, and so I wasn't quite sure what to expect. That doesn't mean I didn't have expectations. I thought I knew what to expect. And what I expected was maybe some props, perhaps a poster or something like that, but nothing I thought that would warrant a dozen helpers and a trailer to get back here. So imagine my surprise and awe when I walked into Kent United Methodist Church and saw the elaborate sets that they had created. And I couldn't believe it. It seemed like every hallway I went down was swimming in another sea of murals and underwater creatures. And that was all before I even saw the 16-foot boat, which, if you've heard, took quite a bit of determination to get here, and some boldness in disassembling it creatively and reassembling it. But we got it here, and it is a joy to have. So I'm standing there, letting this soak in, if you will, and I'm thinking, wow, they really went all out. All right, I was really thinking, wow, they really went overboard. Needless to say, I was impressed. Flash forward to this week, and I've carried this sentiment with me. I am still impressed. Probably even more so as I watched the preparations unfold, as I saw the scenes come to life in our own worship space. That's maybe why, when I sat down to read our scripture for this week, there was one phrase that seemed to jump out at me. Impress them on your children. Well, I read that quickly and I thought, oh, we have got that covered. I mean, wait till they see these sets and the fun that's in store. Impress your children? Check. We've got that. So I kept reading happily, and then I stopped and reread the passage and thought, oh, it says impress them on your children. That is, impress God's law, God's love on your children. Put another way, teach your children. That's very different than impress your children. Or at least it can be. There are, of course, those beautiful moments when our children are both impressed and impressed upon. And that is, of course, our hope for this week. For surely this week our children will be immersed in God's love. They will have that impressed upon them. But at the same time, they'll be in awe at the fun and the joy of Vacation Bible School and that church has to offer. Yes, this will surely be an impressive week, and one that we should and do rejoice in. But then that got me to thinking, when the celebration ends, I wonder where we'll be. You see, we live in a society that overall seems much more interested in impressing our children than in being careful about what they impress upon them. I think it could make sense a little. Remember, we are so busy. You remember all those calls we talked about last week. It's no wonder we strive to impress people. We're always fighting a constant stream of input. We're always vying for people's attention, even for our children's. It seems we need to do some big extravaganza to cut through the noise of TV or video games. We need some big to-do just to compete with busy schedules, or sports, or school. Something massive, something impressive, just to attract from other things that seek our attention. Just to grasp people's attention for a second before it slips away again. And so we seek to impress. We think we have to. Although if you've had children, you know that this may not always be the case. It could be the smallest detail, the most mundane event that catches their curiosity. It's the everyday conversation that catches their ear, for better or worse, wrote a song called Watching You that captures this point perfectly. So I invite you to listen together as we hear what really makes an impression on our children. Well, maybe we will not listen to the song, but there are words that we can read anyways, just in case. Well, and if you can't see them, I will read them to you, because I do not sing with a microphone on. So, let me go back here so I don't get them wrong. It says, driving through town, just my boy and me, with a Happy Meal in his booster seat, knowing that he couldn't have the toy till his nuggets were gone. Green traffic light turned straight to red. I hit my brakes and mumbled under my breath as fries went a-flying and his orange drink covered his lap. Something none of us know anything about, I'm sure. Well then, my 4-year-old said a 4-letter word. It started with S, and I was concerned. So I said, son, now where'd you learn to talk like that? He said, I've been watching you, Dad. Ain't that cool? I'm your buckaroo. I want to be like you and eat all my food and grow as tall as you are. We got cowboy boots and camel pants. Yeah, we're just alike. Hey, ain't we, Dad? I want to do everything you do, so I've been watching you. We got back home and I went to the barn. I bowed my head and I prayed real hard. I said, Lord, please help me help my stupid self. Then this side of bedtime later that night, turning on my son's Scooby-Doo night light, he crawled out of bed and he got down on his knees. He closed his little eyes, folded his little hands, and talked to God like he was talking to a friend. And I said, son, now where'd you learn to pray like that? He said, I've been watching you, Dad. Ain't that cool? I'm your buckaroo. I want to be like you and eat all my food and grow as tall as you are. We like fixing things and holding Mama's hand. Yeah, we're just alike. Hey, ain't we, Dad? I want to do everything you do, so I've been watching you. You hear how just watching his father has left an impression on this child. I imagine this is a truth that most, if not all of us, already know. We already know that we don't need to impress our children to teach them. We already know that they learn best just by watching what we do and listening to what we say. And they already know how to do that. They're already watching and listening. Maybe that's why Deuteronomy goes on to say, impress them upon your children. Talk about the commandments when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. We just need to talk to our children about God. We really need to talk to everyone about God, but we'll start this week with our children. Everywhere we are, we can talk about God. We can tell God's story. We can stop our children to point out God's presence all around them. God's presence in their friendships. God in the trees, in the sky, in the grass. God in the arm that holds them when they fall. God in the warm bath that makes them clean. God in the rest that makes them ready for another day. God's provision in their meals and God's abundant bounty in their snacks. God everywhere. That's part of my hope with the box, to point out God's presence to our children and to us all around us. And believe me, I know sometimes it can be scary or frightening or uncertain to look in the box and when you look in that box, when you practice this, when you keep trying to tell the story anyways, because eventually that box will begin to break apart. And pretty soon, when you talk about God all around you every day, at morning and at night, at bedtime, at bath time, at mealtime, eventually what you're left with is a cross, just like this one. Because the box breaks apart and we know that God is already everywhere. We cannot keep God in a box. We cannot keep God in our box, the four walls of our church, because God is already everywhere. And that, my friends, is very impressive. That is the good news for us today. We don't need to be impressive. It might be nice when we are. We can celebrate those moments. But we don't need to be impressive. Because God's story is already impressive enough. We just need to tell it. As Rodney Atkins reminds us, our words and actions will leave an impression on our children. So when this fun-filled week of Vacation Bible School is over and we collapse in joy and exhaustion, we don't need to be worried about, well, now what? How do we keep them interested now? Or what are we going to do next year? How do we top this? We just need to keep telling the story. In the church, in the car, in your home, in the morning, and at bedtime. Or as Dr. Seuss might suggest from Green Eggs and Ham, we need to talk about God in a boat with a goat, in the rain, or in the dark. And let me say, especially in our dark times, we need to talk about God. So in the rain or in the dark, on a train or in a car, or in a tree or in a box,